Okay guys, so I'm just going to quickly talk through this. I need to drill some holes through my joists now to run the cables. So I've got this picture that was given to me by building control officer on a particular job, and I just found it really easy, really simple to use. Obviously it's got basic normal joist sizes here. Tells you the size of the maximum size of the notches, maximum sizes of the holes. And then it's got this diagram at the top, which then also shows you um, where you can put them and where you can't put them. So what I've done is I've also drawn it out on a joist in a minute, and I'll show you how it all works out. But effectively, this is a 1 meter span of joist. The first 70 millimeters or 0.07 of that length, you can't put any notches or joists. Then you've got from 0.07 to 0.25, so in this case 250 millimeters. That's where your notches would go. And then from 250 millimeters to 400 millimeters, that's where you would put your holes, and they would be in the center of the joist. In the center, where there's going to be the most loading, okay, so in this case, for this meter joist, between 0.4 and 0.6, so at 400 millimeters and 600 millimeters, there's nothing that goes in here, no notches or holes. And then from that center point onwards, it's in reverse. So from 0.6 to 0.75, we can have our holes again. And then from 0.75 to 0.93, we can have our notches. And then for the last 70 millimeters or 0.07, 0.07 in this case, we don't have anything again. And the reason for that is obviously this is where most of the loading is going to be, through the center of the beam. With anything, if you put something in the center, that's where it wants to fold. If you notch out the bottom of a joist, what you actually do is you decrease the width of the width of the timber, not the width, the height of the timber, sorry, by that much. So, for instance, if this was a 100 millimeter joist, and I take out 10 mil, I don't have a 100 millimeter joist anymore. If I take it out the bottom, I've got a 90 millimeter joist. That's why all the notches should always be at the top, because then it doesn't impact on the thickness of the joist, if that makes sense. Think about when you're bending something. If you put all the stress is on the outside edge, that's got to stretch the furthest. The moment you cut it or damage it or weaken it, that's effectively what you've done. It is in the on-site guide. I'll just put that there. Zoom it in a bit. It does. I don't know if you can see that. It's gone blurred for some reason. Okay, I'll try and talk through that. It looks a bit blurred on the screen. So what we've got here, where a low voltage cable is installed under a floor or above a ceiling, it must be run in such a way that it is not liable to be damaged by contact with the floor or ceiling or the fixings thereof. A cable passing through a joist or under floorboards or ceiling support must A, be at least 50 millimeters from the top or bottom as appropriate, obviously, so we miss those screws. Some people just pick up whatever screws they've got on site and fix the floor down. So if they've got 2-inch screws, that's what's going to put the floor down with. Again, you can't allow for all stupidity, all types of people. So if you've done 50 millimeters, you've done enough to protect yourself, to exonerate yourself. B, have earthed armouring or an earthed metal sheath. Or C, be enclosed in earth steel, steel conduit or trunking. Or D, be provided with mechanical protection. Now it goes on to say there that provided mechanical protection, that's difficult to meet that requirement. Or E, forms part of a sellable pelv circuit. Again, it then tells you about these measurements again, etc., etc. And it's exactly the same as what I've just showed you, but the diagram I showed you is a better picture, I think. It then says as well at the bottom of here, I'm just going to bring this up and hopefully you better see this a bit better. Spin this round, zoom this out. Why is that not zooming on that properly? Okay, that's not really helping too much, but basically, notes at the bottom: A, maximum diameter of holes should be 0.25 times the joist depth. Holes on center line in a zone between 0.25 and 0.4 times the span. So if you do 0.25 times the span, so in this case it's a meter, would come out as 250 millimeters. C, maximum depth of notch should be 0.125 times joist depth. I try to tell people, electricians, not to notch joist because you don't get such a good job and it's really difficult to try and keep the cables in the notch. It's a real nightmare, and then you need to really put some mechanical protection over that, in my opinion. It used to be that you had to use those sort of safe plates. I don't know if people still do. I mean, I keep some on the van for these situations, but I tend not to use notches. E, notches on top in a zone between 0.07 and 0.25 times the span, which I've shown you in that picture. And E, holes in the same joist should be at least 3 diameters apart. So if you've used a 25mm auger bit, you need to be 75mm away from that hole before you start the next hole. And that's kind of what they're showing here. I've got another book, which is the NIC EIC 17th edition toolbox guide, which again just shows, the same sort of thing, just another way of looking at it. Again, it doesn't look like this is showing up very well. Okay, so what does all that mean? Well, let me adjust this camera up. Here we go. Zoom it out. I have to bring that in. How's that? Okay, let's try it over. Start over on the left. This shaded area here, which you're looking at, basically, rather than cut the joist down to make it exactly a meter, I've just measured it just in case I need it at some point. So ignore this part. Here's your 0.07. So in this case, because it's a 1 meter long joist, it's 70 millimeters. That's a no-go zone for notches or holes. We've then got this from 0.07 to 0.25 on this 1 meter joist, so that's 250 millimeters to this point. So we've got 180 millimeters for notches. From 0.25 to 0.4, because this is a 1 meter joist again, so 250 millimeters to 400 millimeters. This is where I can put my holes, and I've got 150 millimeters span to do that. In the middle, I've got no holes or notches across this 200 millimeters. So obviously, if this was a 2 meter joist, that would be double that distance. All these distances would double. Let me spin this round, and then from that center point on, again we get the same deal. So we've then got another 150 millimeters from 0.6 or 600 mil of the joist to 0.75 for holes, and then the last 180 millimeters for notches, and then finally that last 0.07 of the joist, which is a no-go zone. If I have an auger bit, so I've got a 25 millimeter auger bit, and then I want to spin this back. Right, zoom that in. So we want there. Hand this up a bit. Okay. So in this 150 millimeters where I need to be at the moment, this joist is. This is a 170 millimeter joist. So half that distance would be 850, I think. So if I mark 850, double check that from the top, So yeah, 850. And what I'll do, I'll just, for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to draw that out roughly, so you guys can see this. Alright, but let me do it in pen because you'll be able to see it better on the video. So that's my centre line. That's the centre of the joist. So in that 150 millimeters for the holes, that's where I need to get my holes drilled out. I don't want to be below that, I don't want to be above that ideally. And the centre is the strongest point. I definitely want to be more than 50 mil away from the top if I can help it, because then obviously I won't be in the way of screws and such like. Centre is the best. So if I start off here, so there's one hole right on the edge of that. So from the edge of there, so that's my centre point. From here, I then need to be 3 times the distance away. So 75 mil away from there. So that edge then means that my other hole, so I'm going to have a hole here, and I'm going to have a hole here. That doesn't leave a lot of space for any more holes. If I look back at this sheet here, so what have we got? We've got 170, I think I said, wasn't it? So 175 mil joist. I can have a 43.8 millimeter hole in that, rather than a 25 if need be. Personally, you know, that doesn't look right to me. It is right, obviously, you know, because somebody's worked that out. They've sat down and worked it out. But obviously, sometimes we get a bit, you know, it just, if it doesn't look right or feel right, we stay away from it. If I had no other choice, I would make a hole that size. Do I feel comfortable doing that? Probably not. I guess experience would tell me that, you know, that's a lot to be taken out of a joist. But again, somebody's worked that out that knows more about it than I do. So you have to trust that judgment. It's in black and white. It's in many applications, many publications, shall I say. You just have to trust that. So coming back to that on-site guide again, it says here the diameter of the hole, I don't know if you guys can see that, but it basically says diameter of the hole should be 0.25 times the joist depth. So if I get my calculator out, so calculator, so 0.25 times, and it was 170 millimeter joist, so 42.5 millimeter hole. Right, let me do that again for you. 0.25 times 170, 42.5. Okay, so that's in millimeters. That's the maximum size of hole that I can have with this joist. According to this sheet, in a 250 millimeter joist, I don't know if you can see that there, the maximum hole size I can have is a 62.5 millimeter hole. That's some hole, but anyway, it's a different story. So there you go. So what I'm going to do now, that's the end of this video, just to sort of quickly talk through that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to line this up on my joists, and I'm going to start drilling some holes, and I'll take a separate video of that. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope that's been of some help to you. Take care, guys. Bye.